Any further discussion? Questions?
This is for fiscal year 2013-14 going into effect July 1.
Correct. This is a public transportation supported North Carolina DOT grant. And they do this early because these grants have to be to the Board of Transportation by April 1st.
All right, without further ado, then the chair would entertain a motion to allow April to apply for this grant.
So moved.
We have a motion.
A second.
2 seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Well, on the second grant, would you go into that just briefly again, please?
This is the Section 5310, the Elderly and Disabled Grant. This is a federal grant, and this is locally what we call the EDVAN. This is not the core public transportation. This was not an original program of the core public transportation system in Alleghany. This was an additional grant that I put in 2009, and the program started in 2010. We have been we have been supplementing this grant from the Transportation Operating Fund, and we're no longer going to be able to do that. So what we have done to the commissioners is to let you know, as county manager and I let you know, is if this program is going to continue, and this is a 2-year grant, it is funded up to June of this year, this fiscal year. It may be possible, probably the commissioners are going to have to put money into this program for it to continue.
Okay. Is there any questions of April or comments, please?
I would like to
Commissioner Lees?
ask the question, can we tentatively approve this grant and then make a final decision in June before
Yes.
we approve our general fund budget for next year?
The commissioners can vote for me to go ahead and submit the application. It will go to the Board of Transportation in April. If it's approved through that process and we get the contract in July, we do not have to sign the contract. You can decide at that point, or you can decide through the budget process whether you want to supplement the program or not.
Okay.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, April, just a couple of concerns that I might have. I know that it's still uncertain on what's going to happen as far as the Medicaid, and I think what do they call it, brokerage, statewide brokerage. You told us something about that. I know there's uncertainty there.
Yes.
And then I'm not completely at ease with understanding the difference in the EDVAN as compared to EdTap. And without the EDVAN, how would that affect the overall program? And I want to preface that by saying that I think it's an outstanding program. I've seen it up close, and you do a lot of good things in this county. But it's my understanding that the second grant does involve the EDVAN.
Correct, and it's just the EDVAN. The difference, the clarification between EdTap and ED. EdTap is the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Assistance Program, and for the 2 new commissioners that aren't familiar with that, that's a yearly grant that we apply for. In the past, we have received $60,000 and $70,000 to provide only elderly and disabled medical transportation for the citizens here in the county. That pot of money has been reduced to $49,000 as of the current year, but all of that money is set aside just for medical transportation within Alleghany County and outside Alleghany County. The ED program was put in place.
I'm gonna stop you right there, because that's a key point for everybody to understand. What she said was that now EdTap monies can actually be used for shopping, can be used for social, can be used for multiple transportation needs. But April, for the new board members too, April has an advisory board, And the advisory board is made up of consumers, whether it be social services, group home, council on aging, that's her advisory board, and that's who April goes back and has conversations with, is her consumers about her rates and things of that nature. It was the advisory board several years ago,
In 2003.
I mean, multiple years ago, that we had such a need for elderly transportation that you had to prioritize medical trips only.
Yes, we did.
So, whereas these funds can be used for anything, they've been held for only medical purposes for the elderly since 2003.
Correct.
Okay, I think that's a key point to understand, because now if you jump onto the ed, I'm sorry to jump in the middle.
No, that's fine.
So, I'm sorry, just so, the EdTap funds now you're saying can be used for something other than.
Well, they've always been able, but what we've done through the advisory board is limited to medical trips only. They've prioritized, see, there's always a demand there's always been a demand, generally speaking, from the elderly, more demand for transportation than money. Okay, so what the advisory board done, there was a time when you were running out 3 months for the end of the year, and they literally had to cut transportation off, either pay full price or no transportation. So through the years, since 2003, I didn't realize it was that long.
2003.
Wow, years are going by, but since 2003, they've said, look, medical trips are more important. It's all important, but medical trips is more important than going to the grocery store. And in order to get a better bang or use the money for more important or more valid, or not valid, but more important trips, they limited EdTaps to medical purposes only.
Right.
Since 2003. Now, you don't have to do that,
No.
but if you don't do that, then you're gonna be denying people who have medical needs transportation, which generally speaking has been deemed more necessary, let's say not more important, more necessary than going to the grocery store.
We apply for that pot of money, but locally it's decided what we do with that pot of money, as long as we are serving the elderly and disabled. And that priority for medical transportation was put in place years ago.
And the ed van fills the void that was left on.
Correct. The advance, when I saw back in fiscal year 2010 that they were going to really significantly start reducing our EdTap funds, I did have a conversation with Dawn about this grant that we're talking about here, right in front of you. This helps here in the county with that medical transportation. We can transfer those folks from the EdTap fund onto the ed van. Plus, this gives them basic daily needs. Go to the grocery store, go to the food closet. We go to the food closet quite a bit. Having their hair done, visiting someone in the hospital. It's things that they couldn't do with other funding sources that we had.
And the numbers you gave us last time you were here were almost staggering. Was it a couple of hundred?
We have about 500 people that qualify for this program.
How many? I'm sorry.
We have about 500 people that qualify for this program, but as far as usage, that it's below 200 that continually use the program in the county. And that it is just confined to the county. That van does not go out of Alleghany County.
So if this is not funded, what other services are available for these folks?
If this is not funded, we have folks that are coming to the food closet that are paying $1 now, they'll be paying $6. We have a disabled young man that comes to work. His cost will go from $1 to $6.
And that's going to the RGP program, correct? The
That's
Rural
correct.
General
We'll
Public.
just
It's another
switch
grant
the
source that doesn't pay as much as the ed van does.
$6 a trip.
Yes, it would be $12 round trip.
Well,
This is a tough one for the board, and I agree that it can be put off, this contract doesn't get signed till June. That would allow April to actually, we would go through our budget process in April, and you would, at that point, request the amount of county funds you think necessary to operate ed, and it would be a budget discussion at that point. It's still, and that's assuming that we would need to ask for those funds. But this is a tough discussion amongst this board. It's a tough discussion. April and I take pride that for years, she's been able to operate her operating budget without asking for general fund dollars. I mean, you take pride, I mean, you worked hard to do that. And so this is a major, it's a major issue. It's not something that April and I want to come ask you for, and it's a major discussion amongst yourselves, because once you start subsidizing this, you know, we've had years that RGPs ran low,
Yes.
correct? We've had years that EdTap, the one that's just for medical, you're still having to do things towards the end of the year to offset, so the EdTap doesn't run out, correct? And so it becomes a tough discussion. I want everybody to understand, the public, and for this board to know, this is a tough discussion, because if you subsidize ed, then the question will come, do you start subsidizing EdTap or RGP and things of that nature? And so, yes, I do think you could vote to allow April to apply for the grant, and then April, we would have more accurate numbers coming to you around budget time. But having said that, just trying to let everybody know, this is still a tough discussion, because it's, once you get into subsidizing certain things, I don't know if we'd ever get away from it.
At one time, I know you had alluded to that, even though not very positively, that there may be some other funds out there that have been untapped. Is that, or did you say, did I just make out?
If they're there, we'll try to get them, but I'm not aware.
Is there any?
I've been searching and researching, I haven't found anything yet. Most of our funds, honestly, are funneled through DOT and FTA. There's a few little things out there, like March Dimes, things like that, but you have to be very specific of what you're applying for with transportation. It has to be child transportation with March Dimes and things like that, so.
And to be clear for everybody, so the public doesn't misunderstand, this transportation is already subsidized by other dollars, other state and other tax dollars. When I'm talking about the county subsidizing, I'm talking about, do we get to the point of subsidizing with property tax dollars, the general fund dollars? This is already a governmental subsidized transportation system through federal DOT and state DOT.
Any other comments?
I don't really see, going forward or, trying to make a motion because regardless, when we get to budget time, it's still gonna impact budget and taxpayer money strictly. And, that's just putting it off down the road. I have a problem really subsidizing this, and we're gonna have an extremely tough budget year coming up. The federal government is in horrible shape. We're obviously gonna see some cuts probably coming from the state level too, that's gonna impact all these programs. And regardless whether, you say you'll address it again or you go forward with it, $42,000 is gonna be directly impacted on the budget at a minimum at this point. It may be more. And I just can't support that.
Well, this is one of the reasons we have the public hearings. We have a couple of weeks to think it over and talk it over with people, and I can assure you, there's been a lot of soul searching over this going on in the past couple of weeks. I have, and, this is one of the best programs we have in this town, bar none. And you've done the best job anyone could ever do, I think, as far as managing it and keeping it self-supporting for the most part, from county dollars. I just am not ready to step over that threshold of subsidize, a direct money stream, revenue stream at this point. I hope you understand that.
Yeah, I do.
It is, it's a step when you take it and you can't come back from. And, I'm just so proud of what you have been able to do. I won't take credit, but you have been able to do, and the county's been able to do, Don's been able to do to this point. And, I'm just not ready to
Well,
step through that door.
on the flip side of this conversation, there is over 80,000 miles on this van, and that van will become part of the fleet. We'll just take the Ed logos off of that,
Right.
and it will become part of the fleet, and we'll just run into, tires fall off of it, and it is our van until it goes into surplus, so.
Yeah.
We have to stay within the boundaries of what that van was bought from, elderly and disabled transportation assistance, so we'll still be, and that's not a problem here in Alleghany County. Almost half of this county is either elderly or disabled, so that is what the majority of that van will be used for.
Well, and there's been some discussion with, going ahead and, voting to approve your letting you apply for the grant. And then, but it is kind of kicking the can, but it would give us a chance to look for more money, look for other sources, tighten the belt, whatever needed to be done, it would give us a little more time. That's just my thoughts on that. I guess I'm supposed to be quiet, but.
Well, understanding what goes through when you're applying for a grant, I would assume it's a pretty lengthy process that would be on your part.
Well, the grant is actually due on the 28th, but I'm out next week, so I'll have to have all this done by Friday, which will be done. About 60% of the grant is finished. All the narrative part and all the descriptions and all the numbers that I could go ahead and plug in without board's approval and things are already finished.
60% of it is done at this time, is that what you're saying? I don't know. There's just the two things that I'm concerned of is the uncertainty with the Medicaid, and Mr. Goodrow spoke to that. We really don't know what to expect.
We don't know anything about the Medicaid broker system. The last information that I have is they've even extended the deadline for the request for proposals until January 9th. We were hoping to have an answer in January, whether this was going to happen or not. That deadline has been extended, and that's what you've been told also, correct?
And even though you've run this program just with very little county money, I'm a little concerned that if, I'm not so sure I'm ready to take a chance on overextending some of the services that we're trying to provide to these folks.
I understand.
Those are concerns. Now, with that said, I'm not so sure if a lot of the work has been done. I'm not necessarily etched in stone as to whether I would go along with this or not. So I'm not so sure that Mrs. Lee, if you were interested in pursuing this grant, if that's all we're talking about, I'm not so sure I can go along with it.
I have no problem with finishing this grant and having it in by Friday if the board chooses to go that route.
Understanding that there's no assurance.
Understanding there's no assurance, yes, that this program will continue. Yeah, I understand.
Well, if there's no further discussion, okay.
My philosophy is never give up. Never give up. And when it comes to grants, that pays off. I'm not for putting in $21,000 or $42,000 into the general fund, but who knows what might happen. There may be a grant that pops up that might match up to this
That would
and match
sure.
perfectly.
And then we
I
have
think
this
it's-
in place.
It would be the wrong thing to trash April's work at this point and diminish our chances for this band grant. I just think it's the wrong thing to do to say no now. We would have another opportunity in June before the budget is approved for the general fund to look at it again. And if it comes down to a cost of, great cost to the general fund, then so be it. But I think it's the wrong time to give up right now.
One thing to keep in mind about grant money, it's still tax dollars, regardless where it comes from. Whether it comes from the state, whether it comes from the federal government, it falls back on the taxpayers. And, you know, we hear over and over and over, well, it's grant money, it's free money, it's fictitious money. It's not. We're paying for it, and that's something to keep in mind. And I can't, you know, keep going down that same path. This is Alleghany County. Yes, April has done a great job with Alleghany in Motion, and I commend you for it. But we have to realize who we are, and we're Alleghany County. And it's time we start making the tough decisions, you know, I mean, the county's in pretty decent shape right now, but we don't know where we're going in 2 years. You know, in the federal government, we know what shape they're in. In the state, yes, I mean, you know, they're mandated to have a balanced budget, but I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of changes coming out of Raleigh. And a lot of these grant, you know, funding sources are gonna dry up. And I just, you know, to make a decision now you know, you're putting off the inevitable. It's not giving up. It's dealing with reality.
With all due respect, that grant money is still out there, and I'm gonna fight for every penny that we can get for.
I understand it's up there, but just, everybody needs to understand where that grant money comes from. It's not free money that just appears.
Also have to take into consideration the services that this provides too. I know my family has used this service, and if we hadn't had this service, we would have had to have used an ambulance, which would have been of great cost to us.
Well, one of the things, the service really is not going away, it's just gonna change the cost, so, as April has mentioned to us.
Okay, folks, any other comments?
I think, we ought to try. If we can't get it, and somebody else will. Well,
Well, is there a motion? Does someone have a motion?
I would like to make a motion to tentatively approve this grant, or approve the April to pursue the grant application, and then have a final look at the grant results in June before any general fund allocation is approved. Give it a final look in June, after we know what the state has approved for this grant.
Have a motion, is there a second?
I would second that.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, then those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
4-1. Thank you. Thank you, April.
Thank you. And I invite all the commissioners to come by